Shalom, peace and blessings be with you, Lee Weissman. I'm Lale Tuncer. We're from the Universal God Message of Peace charity, and we're here today to talk about the topic of who are we? Who are we? Who am I? What is our higher purpose, and where are we going? So over to you, Mr. Weissman.
Okay, so I thought that to start this topic, we'd sort of talk about what are we? As human beings, what are we? And I think that the scripture is a great place to start because it gives a beautiful description of what a human being is, and both the Torah and the Quran, and of course the Christian Bible, describe man as a lump of mud. That's a lump of mud, a lump of clay that's shaped and breathed in with a soul directly by God. Now that makes first of all, that makes human beings completely different from everything else in the creation according to the scriptures, because the rest of the world is created by speech, right? God speaks and it comes into existence, right? And speaking, if you think about it, is a much more refined, is a kind of refined process, right? The air comes through your lungs and it's shaped by your mouth and shaped by your lips and your tongue and everything else. And then it comes out as sound, and it's very complicated, and there are all sorts of complicated sounds. But according to the Torah, the soul of Adam was breathed into him. Now you think about breathing something into, blowing something into something, right? There's no intermediary. There's nothing. It's direct, right from God, so to speak, into man. So man has, on the one hand, has this physical being, has this material being, and that the scripture describes it as clay, as being, the most common substance of the earth. And there's a beautiful midrash, a beautiful Jewish story that the clay was taken from all over the earth, right? That little bit of clay was brought from here and from here and from here and from here. So the entire earth is contained in this being. And then inside of this very material being is this immutable soul, this little piece of godliness, so to speak. And so here we have in mankind a kind of paradox and a contradiction, where on the one hand, material physical beings, just like the rest of the creation, and the rules of physics, the laws of physics, and everything else apply to us. And then at the same time, right, there's something about us. There's a soul and a spiritual component to us that doesn't exist in the same way in the rest of the creation. Doesn't mean that there isn't a spiritual component to the rest of the creation. There is, but ours is different. Ours doesn't come from the speaking of God, so to speak. Ours comes from the breathing of God. It comes from the very depths, so to speak. When I breathe into something, it's coming from deep inside of me. And so that's a special, immutable thing. And so we are kind of divided beings. We can see it even in our own, if you look at the DNA of a human being, right? We share, I don't know, 95% of our DNA with chimpanzees, and 85% with dogs, right? Our body is an animal body, and the scripture acknowledges that, by the way, right? Because Adam, when he's created, he takes a look at the animals, and he's looking at them and considering them, for a possible mate, right? He ends up naming all of them, but he understands that there's something about them that's like him, right? And so we have this animal body with animal needs, and then we have this something else, and that something else. I think the goal of spirituality is to access and to identify that something else. But then there's
what do you think?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Tim. What is that something else?
Well, I think that something else
That's
is
from your understanding. Obviously, that's a,
I think that something
it's a
else
big
is
question.
you. I think that something else is you. I think that what's really you, what's eternal, um,
Hmm.
what's eternal, important, best, and most wonderful and amazing and beautiful about you is that. Now,
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that it's not different for each person. Kind of imagine, imagine you have a beautiful person, right? So a beautiful person, if you put the beautiful person in ugly clothing, right, they could look ugly. But if you take a beautiful person and you put them in beautiful clothing, how much more beautiful do they look? So in the same way that that inner part of us, which I think can never be, which can never really be sullied, right? It's an untouchable part of us. That untouchable part of us, we can clothe it in all sorts of, you know, in good thoughts and good speech and good deeds, or we can clothe it in not so good thoughts and not so good speech, not so good deeds. But what's weird, I think, about this soul, and one of the weird features of it, also you understand from scripture, is remember Adam, right? Adam is created, and the Torah puts it in a strange way. It says that he was male and female both. Now, it's hard to understand what that means. It's hard to understand what that means. The rabbis were confused by it, honestly. And one way they understood it is kind of imagine, one way, you know, the story we have is that that uh, Hawa, Eve was pulled from the side of his body. So another version of the story goes like this, that he was actually a male female being like this, male on one side, female on the other side, right? So when it says takes from his side, means from the side half of his body. And now, if he's male and female like this, the problem is that it's very hard to have a relationship like this, right? If we're not face to face, if I'm facing this way and you're facing this way, well, it's really hard to have a relationship with each other, right?
They
What
were
does God
basically
do,
yeah.
right? He divides them and turns them face to
Mhm.
face so that now they can have a relationship. So that's the weird part. The weird part about this human being is that this is not a creature that was made to be alone, right? This is a
Mhm.
creature that was made to be with other human beings. And so our relationships with other human beings now becomes very important because it's not just a matter of our bodies, right, and our survival, which it certainly is, right, because it's difficult to survive in this world without other people, especially if you're a baby, right? We're the most dependent little creatures ever, so we need other people, but also because our humanity is incomplete. Um, when we don't have love, companionship, fellowship, all of those things, we don't have we're incomplete. So we're individuals, but we're also individuals, right? We're individuals, but we also need each other. So far, here's what we got. Okay. We're physical beings that are simultaneously physical beings simultaneously spiritual, and sometimes those are at that causes conflict, right? Those two sides of us can be in conflict. That 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 spiritual side of us is who we are, but that we clothe it with all sorts of things, with our speech and with our thoughts, with our action. And lastly, that we are not made to be alone. We're created to be with one another. So that's what we're working with here. Okay, so that's what's under the hood so far.
Well, thank you. That was very well. That's a big topic, and you managed to fit it in very nicely in then a few paragraphs. So that's great. Well done. Can I ask a question? So, obviously we all sort of struggle with I want to talk a little bit about values and virtues of humanity
Mhm.
and the concept of righteousness and a little bit about our ego. And you mentioned garments and clothings, and sometimes we clothe ourselves. Do we clothe ourselves with um, sort of the garments of sort of to do with our ego, such as are we, someone might say, well, I am greedy, or I am jealous, or I am lazy. Is that who we really are, or is it just a clothing or a garment covering over who we really are inside?
Well, look, if you say to
Are
yourself,
we better?
if I understand this, right, and as I say, okay, so I am these two things. I am this kind of material side, and I am this spiritual side, and that spiritual side, right, is absolutely perfect and pure and amazing, right, and full of light, and so it it seeks to express itself, right? Actually, both of our sides kind of seek to express themselves, right? Our physical side also does, our material side does, and sometimes in the form of our in the form of our ego, right? Interestingly, right? An ego is a kind of false sense of self, right? The ego is something which is created, which we create we kind of put together from our experience as a kind of sense of self that's not necessarily our true self, but kind of the one that we've created, and we create from experience. And that's not a bad thing. That's part of life. Part of life is that we is
Does
that
it ever become a part of, does it ever become a part of our true self if or is it sort of just is it something, is it just a garment or?
Well, the ego, I think, look, as we go through life, and we have experiences, we start to we start to accumulate
Mm.
a set of expectations about the world, right? And desires, expectations about the world, and desires about the world, and those things kind of conglomerate into an ego, right? Into what we, what we expect of the world. And we spend a lot of time trying to make the world meet our expectations, right? So very often, it's the ancient Indian philosophers used to talk about the guy who would take a walk at night and he would see a rope in the road and think it was a snake. Why? Because then everything on the road looks like a snake, right? And we
It's
go
an illusion.
and it's going to become an illusion, but it's an illusion that's based on your experience. My experience is that snakes are scary and they come out at night, and I'm taking a walk at night. And that's your ego, right? Your ego is constantly projecting things into the world based on your experience. Now, it's also possible through a kind of self-reflection, right, to start questioning those expectations of the ego, because very often they're not based on reality, right? The reality is that sometimes it's just a rope, it's not everything in the road is a snake, right? And so you can start changing your expectations about things, but you also have the ability to change yourself. And I think it's the garments of the soul, right? Which really become us, which are in constant change, right? And we
Mhm.
influence who we are by what we do, by what we say, and by what we think. And there,
Mhm.
there are some things which are not in our control. Okay? We all experience circumstances that are, as you say, beyond our control, right? We don't get to choose where we're born. We don't get to choose our parents. We don't get to choose the weather, mostly. We don't get to choose um, the people who collide into our life. We don't get to choose a lot of things, right? A lot of things we don't get to choose. But moral choice we always have. There isn't always an area within which we have choice, and which the ability to choose. And that's the area in which we build up the garments of the soul, with what we can choose to think and what we can choose. And now, it's interesting to talk
Yeah.
about thinking.
The only free will. Yeah.
It's now with
Sorry.
cognitive behavioral therapy and all this stuff now that they've found, that how much thinking has an impact on who we become and how we see the world. And just a slight change in thinking can have a huge impact on your ability to kind of navigate the world.
Definitely. And I think it's important for us to reflect on what we understand as success in life, true success, where we want to go, where we headed, to think, what do we actually want to accomplish in this world? Because if we don't reflect on that, then we can lose ourselves, can't we? Lose our way. And actually, I think it's be really helpful for us all to reflect on why we see success as how we see it. And because if we can change that, then that's the key, isn't it? To change that way of thinking. If we use our intellect and reason and try to come up with what we a
Yeah.
true what success really means, really. Because, for example, somebody's idea of success might be just to build up material possessions in the world and just to enjoy life to the max and get sort of temporary benefits from this and that. But actually, unless we question, well, why is it that I want that? Am I just a body, or is there something higher to who I am?
I think
And do I have a purpose? And that, just thinking of those questions can perhaps change our idea of success and change the way that we what we desire, what we think, how we speak and how we behave
I
can
think a lot
completely
of times
change.
people are not addressing the question of who am I? They're expressing the question of why am I not what I think I should be? You know, why am I not, why am I not Bill Gates? Why am I not I don't know, I have to think of other, why am I not Albert Einstein? Why am I not Mahatma Gandhi? Why am I not, uh, I mean, meaning to say, like, why haven't I achieved success? Why haven't I, why am I? And instead of dealing with, okay, let's see who I am. Let's see, who this person really is here. I identify myself with some role, or identify myself with some idea of who I'm supposed to be, right? Which could be based on all sorts of things, based on the expectations of parents, expectations of family, expectations of watching too many TV commercials that show me that that my skin should be perfect, and my skin should be perfect, and my teeth should be white, and my beard should be black, and my like everything.
Many of us are trapped in living our lives according to the expectations of other people,
Right.
and
And they become
and
our
trapped in
expectations.
boxes. Yeah.
Right. They become our
And our
expectations.
own, exactly, yeah, exactly. And then we get trapped in, trying to fit into a box that we create for ourselves and in a certain identity. But actually, we're constantly changing, aren't we? The human being is constantly changing. We're not the same person that we were yesterday, and who knows where we'll be tomorrow. And that's something that, we can have effect on by the will of our creator and permission of our creator. Obviously, like, we can choose because we have free will. Everybody according to their own potential. So that brings me to my next question. What is, from an Abrahamic perspective, the higher purpose of a human being. What is true success from our Creator's perspective for the human being from an Abrahamic perspective? Well, yes,
Well, if you remember that story, so let's go back. I always go back to the story of the creation. Okay,
yeah,
it's like when you want to know the mission of a company, right? What do? You should go back to the beginning of the company, to the guy when those guys were
yeah.
sitting around the table, and when everybody's sitting around the table and discussing, hey, what is it we're trying to accomplish? So what was trying to be accomplished here? So, right, God creates Adam, and he says basically he has two missions. Okay, one mission is to
Mhm,
work the garden and protect it. Okay, so we have a
mhm,
special mission in this world to guard it and protect it. And then the second mission begins when he creates a wife, and he says, "Be fruitful and multiply." Right? And really, it's not just to be fruitful and multiply. He says, "Okay, now you have to make a human world also." Right? You have to make a human world also. You have to create a world of people and relationships. And so there are those, there are those two, that's from the beginning, right? And he gives him a commandment. He says, okay, here's the tree. I'm telling you. So we have a relationship with God from the very beginning, right? God creates, and he makes a command. Doesn't work out so great necessarily.
mhm,
But nevertheless, the relationship with God. So that's the first component. Second component is a relationship with each other. And that relationship with each other is absolutely vitally important. That we should really be devoting energy and effort to making those relationships as kind and generous we possibly can. And thirdly is a relationship to, I'm going to say, the world, not the earth, but to the world, right? To the good of the world. Not just, we instead of thinking what's good for us, right? Instead of just thinking about what's
mhm,
good for us, we think what's good for the world. You know, it's
mhm.
good for the world uh to create generous and giving children, right? That's good for the world. It's good for the world to recycle your trash, right? It's good. I mean, and so those three things, thinking about your relationship with God, thinking about your relationship to other people, and thinking about your relationship to the world and your responsibility to the world. Right? We
Absolutely.
human beings are created with this responsibility as God's
Nice.
viceroy, so to speak, on earth. We have this job, and we have to take that job seriously. And so,
So
you know, yeah, go ahead.
what makes a good what makes a good viceroy?
Well, I think what makes good viceroy is a sense of first of all, it's a sense of responsibility, right? I mean, you know what a person well, there's always one person at any workplace, right, who's the go-to person for any job, right? Whenever you know that something has to get done, you know to go to that person. There's always the person who you know not to go to, right? Because you know that it'll never get done. So you should be the person that you should be the go-to person, and to be willing to do whatever needs to be done in order to make
Mhm.
the world better, and to be paying attention to the world around you, right? I mean, a person the viceroy's job, honestly, we all know, okay, the king doesn't do anything. Okay, the king, right? The king is doing king stuff. Okay, the king Vice is the one who does all the hard work. So you have to be prepared to do the hard work, and to be paying attention to your environment, and to be looking to see what needs to be fixed and what needs, you know, and if
Isn't
it's,
that true? Isn't
yeah,
that true kingship?
isn't that what?
Isn't that true? Isn't that sorry about my croaky voice.
That's okay.
Isn't that true kingship to serve, to serve humanity and to look after our planet and to be out there actually,
And that's
with the
our,
people doing
yeah, we all,
doing good.
we all have a certain level, we also have a certain level of kingship, right? We all have a certain level of sovereignty over the world. Sometimes it's just over ourselves, sometimes over our homes, sometimes it's over our communities, sometimes it's over our business, sometimes it's over if you're a teacher, your classroom. We all have some kind of we are all viceroys in that sense, right? We
Mhm.
all have
You all have
all have
different blessings, talents that we can.
our realm. We have our realm, and within our realm, right? Within our realm, we have to be vigilant, and
Mhm.
try to express and to realize that what we do, that what we say, what we think, and what we do not only expresses who we are, but also shapes who we are. That changes you.
Mhm.
If I let's say I'm a horrible person. Okay, I'm not a horrible person, but let's say I'm a horrible person. Okay, I'm a very stingy person. Okay, I'm a very stingy person. But I decide as a very stingy person that every single day I'm going to give I'm going to give charity every day because okay, even though I'm a stingy person, I know that's a good thing to do, so I'm going to do it. So every day, right, every day I give charity. So I go out, I look for a poor person, right? And the first poor person I see, okay, I give charity. That just doing that is going to change me sooner or later, right? I'm not going to be able to
Yeah,
do
that's
that
true.
every day, and my heart is not going to change. My heart will change. And so we have to
Mm.
recognize, and the opposite is also true. If I'm a good person,
Yes, yeah,
if I'm a good person and I do
yeah.
things which are really bad, I can't think, oh, well, I'm a good person, it's going to be okay. No, it's not going to be okay, right? It's gonna affect you. It's going to change you because what you say, what you think, and what you do transforms you and shapes
Yeah.
who you are.
I'm really pleased that you said that actually, because sometimes people say, well, I want to be true to myself and I don't want to give to charity. So if I give to charity, then I feel like I'm not being true to myself. But actually, I think it's what we have to also ask ourselves, despite what we think we want to do, what does our creator want from us? And could it be that actually what we really want is buried underneath that the shells that make us believe that we want something else, but actually what we really want is is to be righteous and 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 to give to charity and to help others and to be just and to be fair and to be honest and to be humble and all these beautiful attributes of our creator. Could it be that actually what we really want is that? It's just that sometimes we forget what we really want and we think we want something else. And the only way we can go back to realizing what we really want is to keep doing those things, even if it goes against what we think we want to do.
Yeah, well, my
So,
experience is that and this is just my experience. I'm not saying that everybody has the same experience. My experience is that there are moments when I can feel my soul like do a happy dance, where I feel like my poor soul has been sitting inside here and it's been sitting there and kind of waiting for me to allow it to express itself, right? But I've been busy with
I
you know whatever it is I'm busy with. And then poor guy, right? This poor, I know probably it's a woman, but I think soul is neshama is a female word. Let's call her for a second. So she's sitting in there, the poor thing, sitting there, poor thing, completely neglected, and it's totally neglected, and she doesn't get to express herself. But meanwhile, this mud man over here is busy doing his thing. And then when I finally express myself like in some virtuous way, do something good, all of a sudden I can feel her like do a little happy dance. And she goes like, oh, thank you. Thank you. You let me express myself. I really appreciate it. It's really good. And I think a lot of people have that experience. Sometimes they don't know what to do with it. You know, they don't it's very fleeting and they don't know exactly what was that. But that's your soul, that's you. saying, thank you for letting me be me. Thank you for letting me express myself. I really needed that. And I think that more and more we can allow, those parts of ourselves to express themselves. And I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of joy in that. I think that's where joy
And
lives.
actually, yeah, you're saying that it's like the body and the soul, and they can feel like they're going in opposite, calling to opposite directions and things. But actually, I think the body speaks to us, and I I I think if we really tune in, we can hear that the body wants to be submissive to our higher self, as in it doesn't, because we get all these things which invite us to temporary pleasures, and then that temporary pleasure is over, we start to feel anxious and depressed, and we get physical symptoms because actually, and it can cause physical pain. And that's our body speaking to us, telling us, this is not
Right.
what I really want, I think, but this is
Maybe
not really what I
and
want.
alternatively, the body can have its happy dance too. I mean, the body can say, well, finally, you're using me for what I was created for, right?
Yeah. It's like
You
like a
put a soul in me, you know,
mm,
why are you treating me like
yeah.
why are you treating me like treating me like I'm your pet dog, right? And feeding me and giving me a bed and everything else, right? But I wasn't created for this, right? I was
Yeah.
created for that soul, right? To be doing what to be acting out the promptings of that soul. And so then the
He
body's
wants to,
happier.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the body wants to be a vessel for the soul, and it wants to be tamed in order to, for us to be able to use it in the service of its creator, and it doesn't actually want to be wild, like a wild beast
Yes.
in,
Yeah.
in control of the world. But but it does fight, and I think actually the fighting is an important, even that is, there's a lot of, we can learn from that,
Hmm.
and it's there to teach us, because without the opposites in this world, we can't really appreciate and understand the value of righteousness, because how can we understand and appreciate the concept of gratitude or kindness or selflessness, for example, if we didn't know what selfishness was? So it's there to teach us, to give us a little bit of a taster of what it feels like, so we can understand the opposite and choose the
And,
opposite,
and
so
those things,
not
those
make that
things
choice
that we
unless.
think of as lower as our lower self also have
Mm.
have some real beauties in them. There's eh, I
A
can't
lot
I
of
find myself I keep going back to the story of creation. So in the story of creation, at one point um in the Torah, God says that the creation is tov ma'od, very good. And so the rabbis ask, what is, and other than that, he keeps saying it's good. But now he says it's very good. So what's the very? So
Mhm,
the rabbis answer, he said the very good, the very there is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination,
mhm,
right? The evil inclination, the
mhm,
nafs, right? The lower
mhm.
self. And so other rabbis ask a question, they go, wait, does that make sense? How can you say that the lower self, the evil inclination is tov ma'od, is very
Yeah.
good? Okay, it doesn't make any sense, right? It's if
Because
it's
it's
either
potential to
bad,
be trans.
right? He said because you know what? If we didn't have it, okay, we wouldn't build houses, we wouldn't have families, we wouldn't do anything. We would sit around, right, and eat the lotuses, and we would, right? That's also the juice of life, and the energy is there, right? There is a kind of energy in there. There's something very valuable,
Oh, there.
and
there
We have
is.
to learn how to
It's
use
space.
that and not reject it, right?
No, exactly. We need it. We need it there to in order to. I think that's where a lot of the wisdom hides, and it's just waiting to be transformed. And if we can transform it, then we can be higher than angels. And I think that's what makes a human being. That's why God desired the human being. We can to have. We can really understand compassion. But how can we understand compassion unless we are a human being, unless we can have, the evil inclination, really? How can we? How can we really truly understand compassion?
Right. And to be able to,
Do
to be able to understand each other and to be able, when we have that. And so we're, once we're able to
Mm.
accept that that's also who we are, right? We're not just our light side, we're also our shadow, right? We're also our dark sides. And to be able to deal with that, to be able to, to say to it, okay, here you are. Nice, nice,
Mm.
nice to meet you, and to deal with that side as best as you can, and to realize that's also an evolving process, just like the rest of it is an evolving process.
And
Um,
yeah, rightly said. And actually, the way to go up is sometimes to go down. Not that we should choose to go down to go up, but that if we fall, it doesn't mean, that means we've got that potential to transform all of that wisdom and go higher up than we could have before. And and yes, so
no,
it's a
that
bit
that's
deep,
that's
but
a topic. That's a great topic for another day, because I think that it's important to understand, that a fall, right? We all experience falls. That's the way it goes, right? Is often one of the best things can happen to us. I used to do an experiment with my students. So I would tell them to stand up. Okay, I'm not going to make you do this, even though I'm tempted, but I'm not going to. Right, and make them stand up and tell
Mhm.
them to jump as high as they could without bending their knees. Right, and they're hopping on their toes and they're not going anywhere. And I said, okay, now I want you to bend your knees and I want you to jump as high as you can. And so they would bend down, right, and then they would take a big leap and say, well, that's kind of how things are, right? Very often,
Okay.
right? Very often, if we don't go down first, we can't leap up. And
And
that's
if
a
you don't go backward, you can't go as far forwards. If you're
right,
if you're jumping over from one cliff edge to another, there's a
right.
big gap. You better to go backwards and then
Go
run into
backwards
it.
and then leap forward.
Ex-
And I think a lot of times a lot of times what we're doing. And so we shouldn't be, you know, we shouldn't be too again, subject for another day, but we shouldn't get scared when we make a fall and when things are not working out so great. And don't get terrified. Just hold on, right? Hold on, take a few step backs, take the leap, right? Bend your knees, jump up. But it's that's part of it, but it's also important to pay attention to, again, who we are, and who we are is a mixed bag, and sometimes we're weighed down by our physicality or by our desires, by our confusions, and that's okay. It's normal. And we find our way out of it. There's a nice analogy in the Torah. It says that if uh, if your enemy's donkey if your enemy's donkey falls on the road, right, and is laboring under its pack, he says you should lift it up, right? So one of the great rabbis, Rabbi Shneur Zalman says, okay, what's this about? He says, first of all, why does it say your enemy's donkey? Why not your friend's donkey, right? Even if it was your friend, right, you'd still want to help the donkey. So he says, if you see the donkey as belonging to your enemy. So what's the donkey? The word donkey is chamor, which related to chomer, which means your physical self. So if your physical
Mhm.
self feels to you like it belongs to your enemy, like it doesn't feel like it belongs to you, right? He
Mhm.
says, don't hit it, right? Lift it up,
Yes,
lift it up.
we should
Help
be
it,
kind to donkey.
be
Yes,
kind to it,
exactly.
right? Be
Yeah,
kind to it.
that reminds me as well when in the Quran it says that when God asked Moses to go to Pharaoh to speak to him, he said he advised him to speak to him gently.
Mhm.
So just to and and so I think maybe for another time we could talk about how we can tame the beast within us.
Okay,
How
so
what's the
that's
best way of
okay. So taming the
and
dragon is the next topic. We'll talk about taming the dragon. Well, thank you so much. This was great. And
thank you so much. Always a
okay.
pleasure.
And next time maybe we'll talk about taming the dragon.
Okay, peace be with you. Shalom.
Shalom.